2 minutes left. God says your soulmate is ready to meet you. My beloved child, listen carefully, don't skip this message, because something about your love story is beginning to shift, and you may be closer to a meaningful encounter than you realize. You have only 2 minutes, so stay with me until the end, because what you are about to hear may touch a place in your heart that has been waiting for answers for a very long time. There are moments in life when everything seems ordinary on the outside, yet something invisible is changing underneath. A door is quietly opening. A path is slowly becoming visible. A person you have never met, or perhaps someone you already know, may be moving closer to a moment that could change the direction of your emotional life. And today, the message is simple: don't lose hope just because you cannot see the whole picture yet. Maybe you've been wondering why love has felt delayed. Why connections that seemed promising disappeared. Why certain people entered your life only to leave. Why your heart had to experience disappointment when all you wanted was something genuine. Perhaps you've asked God, when will it finally be my turn? Maybe you've whispered that question late at night when nobody else could hear you. But listen carefully, a delay is not always a denial. Sometimes the season of waiting is preparing you for something you could not have handled before. Sometimes the person you are praying for is also being prepared in a completely different place, learning lessons you cannot see. And this is where the story becomes interesting. Somewhere beyond your current circumstances, another heart may be going through its own transformation. Someone may be realizing that the relationship they thought they wanted wasn't actually what their soul needed. Someone may be leaving behind old patterns. Someone may be healing from disappointment. Someone may be learning how to communicate instead of running away. Someone may be discovering that love is not simply chemistry or attraction, it is patience, honesty, consistency, and the courage to remain present when things become difficult. You may not know their name yet. You may not know where they are. You may not even know how your paths will cross. But their story may already be moving toward yours. Don't skip. Stay until the end. Because sometimes the most important part of a message isn't the beginning. It's the moment when everything suddenly makes sense. Think about how many unexpected moments have already changed your life. A random conversation. A missed opportunity. A last-minute decision. A place you almost didn't visit. A message you almost didn't send. A person you almost didn't meet. Life can change direction through moments that seem completely ordinary at first. And perhaps your meeting with your soulmate won't arrive with dramatic music or some obvious announcement from the universe. Maybe it will happen in the middle of an ordinary day. Maybe you'll be somewhere you almost decided not to go. Maybe you'll accept an invitation you almost declined. Maybe you'll take a different route. Maybe someone will introduce you to someone else. And suddenly, without warning, you'll find yourself looking into the eyes of someone who feels strangely familiar. Not because you've literally met them before, but because something about their presence feels peaceful. Something feels natural. Something feels different. Maybe the conversation flows without effort. Maybe you laugh unexpectedly. Maybe you notice that you don't feel the pressure to impress them. You don't feel like you're performing. You don't feel like you have to become someone else. You simply feel like yourself. And that can be one of the most beautiful signs of a healthy connection. You don't feel smaller around them. You don't feel anxious about whether you're enough. You feel accepted. But before that moment arrives, there may be one final lesson. Perhaps you're being asked to release the need to control exactly how love will come to you. You've spent enough time imagining the face, the personality, the timing, the location, the circumstances. Maybe you've created an entire picture in your mind. But life rarely follows the script we write for it. Sometimes the blessing arrives wearing a completely different shape than the one we expected. Sometimes the person we thought would be our forever is simply the person who prepared us for something better. Sometimes a closed door protects us from a future we were not meant to enter. And perhaps the reason your heart has felt restless lately is because you're approaching a new season. Something huge may be waiting for you. But listen carefully, waiting doesn't mean sitting still. Waiting means becoming ready. Become the person who can recognize healthy love when it arrives. Become the person who knows their boundaries. Become the person who doesn't confuse attention with commitment. Become the person who doesn't chase someone who repeatedly chooses distance. Become the person who understands that love should bring peace, not constant uncertainty. Because if your soulmate is truly ready to meet you, the most important preparation isn't learning how to find them. It's learning how to recognize what is healthy when they arrive. Maybe your future soulmate is also learning this lesson right now. Perhaps they once gave their heart to someone who didn't know how to handle it. Perhaps they experienced betrayal, rejection, or disappointment. Perhaps they became guarded because vulnerability once cost them something. Maybe they've been telling themselves they don't need anyone. Maybe they convinced themselves that being alone is safer than being hurt again. But something may be changing. Maybe they're slowly becoming willing to trust again. Maybe they're realizing that protecting your heart forever also prevents you from experiencing something beautiful. And perhaps that's why their path is moving closer to yours. Not because either of you is perfect, but because both of you are becoming ready. Maybe you've been asking for someone who understands you. They've been asking for someone who makes them feel safe. Maybe you've been asking for someone loyal. They've been learning how important loyalty is. Maybe you've been asking for someone emotionally mature. They're learning how to communicate. Maybe you've been asking for someone who stays. They're learning not to run. And this is why timing matters. If you had met too early, perhaps you would have hurt each other. If they had arrived before you learned your boundaries, perhaps you would have accepted less than you deserved. If you had met before they learned how to communicate, perhaps the relationship would have become another painful lesson. Sometimes God doesn't delay the blessing. Sometimes God delays the meeting until both people are ready to handle it. That's why you cannot measure your future by your present circumstances. Your current loneliness doesn't tell you what your future will look like. Your past heartbreak doesn't predict your next relationship. Your previous disappointments don't have authority over your next chapter. And the fact that you haven't met the right person yet doesn't mean they don't exist. It may simply mean the story isn't at that page. Maybe the next chapter is closer than you think. Maybe that's why you're suddenly noticing love-related memories. Maybe that's why certain songs feel different. Maybe that's why old emotions are resurfacing. Maybe that's why you've been thinking about what kind of relationship you truly want. Maybe something inside you is preparing to let go of the old version of love. Because you cannot receive something new while constantly reopening the door to something that already taught you its lesson. And perhaps this is your moment to release. Release the person who never chose you. Release the conversation that never happened. Release the apology you may never receive. Release the fantasy of someone changing simply because you waited long enough. Release the belief that you have to earn love. You don't. Healthy love isn't a prize given to the person who suffers the longest. It is a connection built by two people who freely choose one another. And maybe your soulmate is coming into your life with that kind of intention. Not to save you. Not to complete you. Not to fix you. But to walk beside you. That distinction changes everything. Because you are already whole. You are already worthy. You are already valuable. Your soulmate isn't arriving to give you a reason to exist. They are arriving to share a life with the person you've already become. And perhaps that is what makes the timing so important. You have been becoming someone different. Stronger. Wiser. Calmer. More discerning. You no longer want love simply because someone is attractive. You want emotional safety. You want consistency. You want communication. You want someone who respects your dreams. Someone who can celebrate your happiness without competing with it. Someone who can sit with you during difficult moments without making you feel like a burden. Someone who doesn't disappear when things become uncomfortable. Someone who doesn't make you question whether you matter. Maybe that's the person being prepared for you. And maybe they're also looking for you without knowing your name. Maybe they are saying to themselves, I don't know where they are, but I know I want something real. Perhaps they have been disappointed enough times to understand what they don't want. Perhaps they're finally becoming clear about what they do want. And when clarity meets readiness, life can move quickly. That's why the next season may feel different. One day can look completely ordinary. Then one conversation changes everything. One introduction. One message. One invitation. One unexpected encounter. And suddenly, you realize that the waiting wasn't pointless. It was preparation. It was protection. It was growth. It was timing. This changes everything. But don't turn this message into a countdown where you believe you must meet someone within exactly 2 minutes, 2 days, or 2 weeks. The phrase, 2 minutes, is a call to attention, not a guarantee of a specific deadline. Real love cannot be forced by a timer. What matters is the message behind the urgency. Pay attention to your life, stay open to meaningful connections, and don't let fear make you miss opportunities that genuinely deserve your attention. Maybe someone will enter your world unexpectedly. Maybe you'll notice someone you've overlooked. Maybe a friendship will begin changing. Maybe someone who has been quietly admiring you will finally speak. Maybe a new person will appear through work, family, travel, community, or an ordinary daily routine. You don't need to know which door. You simply need to remain open without abandoning your discernment. Because not every intense connection is destiny. Not every coincidence is a sign. Not every person who makes your heart race is meant to stay. Sometimes excitement is simply excitement. Sometimes attraction is simply attraction. And that's okay. Your responsibility is not to turn every encounter into a prophecy. Your responsibility is to pay attention to how someone treats you. Do they respect you? Do they communicate? Do they keep their promises? Do they make room for your feelings? Do they apologize when they're wrong? Do they support your growth? Do they bring peace into your life? Those are the signs that matter. And perhaps when your soulmate appears, you won't need to convince yourself. You won't need to constantly decode their behavior. You won't need to wonder where you stand every night. There will be clarity. There will be effort. There will be mutual interest. There will be a natural desire to keep learning about one another. And even when difficulties appear, there will be communication instead of manipulation. That's what you should look for. Not perfection. Consistency. Not fantasy. Reality. Not endless promises. Action. Maybe your future soulmate is currently learning exactly that. Maybe their past taught them that words are meaningless without behavior. Maybe they once trusted someone who promised forever and disappeared when life became difficult. Maybe they learned that love requires more than feelings. And perhaps that experience is shaping them into the partner you need. This is why you shouldn't resent every delay. Some delays teach. Some delays protect. Some delays redirect. And sometimes the person you wanted so badly would have arrived too early and damaged a version of you that hadn't yet learned how to protect itself. Perhaps the waiting was not punishment. Perhaps it was preparation. Maybe God was not saying, no. Maybe the answer was, not yet. And not yet can feel painful when you're lonely. But sometimes, not yet, is the space where transformation happens. Your soulmate may be preparing too. So while you wait, don't stop living. Travel. Create. Work. Laugh. Make memories. Spend time with people who genuinely care about you. Build the life you would be proud to share with someone. Because you shouldn't build a life around waiting for love. Build a life that love can join. That is a completely different mindset. And perhaps one day, someone will step into that life and say, I'm glad I found you. And you'll realize you weren't actually waiting for them. You were becoming ready for the moment they arrived. Maybe the encounter will be quiet. Maybe there won't be fireworks. Maybe you'll simply notice that you feel comfortable. Maybe you'll talk for hours. Maybe you'll disagree about something and discover that neither of you feels the need to dominate the other. Maybe you'll see how they treat someone who cannot give them anything in return. Maybe you'll notice their kindness when nobody is watching. Those small moments may tell you more than any grand romantic gesture. Because character is revealed in ordinary moments. And perhaps that's what makes a soulmate connection meaningful. It isn't simply that two people feel drawn toward one another. It's that they choose to treat each other well after the excitement settles. The beginning may be magical. The middle requires maturity. The future requires choice. And if your soulmate is truly ready, they will understand that. They won't ask you to carry the entire relationship. They won't make you prove your love constantly. They won't disappear and return whenever they feel lonely. They will participate. They will communicate. They will show up. And maybe you're finally ready for that kind of love too. Perhaps the biggest change has happened inside you. You no longer want someone simply because they want you. You want someone who respects you. You no longer want attention. You want intention. You no longer want chemistry without stability. You want both. You no longer want someone who says, "I miss you," at midnight and disappears the next morning. You want someone who can say, "I'm here," and mean it. That is growth. That is preparation. And perhaps the person coming toward you is being prepared for the same thing. Maybe they are learning that love isn't about possession. It's about partnership. It's about seeing another person's dreams and wanting to help them grow. It's about having difficult conversations without turning them into war. It's about being able to say, "I was wrong." It's about saying, "I don't understand, but I want to." It's about saying, "Let's work through this." And if that is what you are asking for, don't settle for less simply because you're tired of waiting. Your loneliness may whisper, "Take whatever is available." But wisdom says, "Wait for what is healthy." Your fear may say, "You'll never find anyone." But your future says, "You don't know what tomorrow can bring." And perhaps tomorrow is where the unexpected begins. Maybe this very week you will encounter someone new. Maybe the next month will introduce a person you never expected. Maybe an existing connection will evolve. Maybe your path will change because of one small decision. You don't know. And you don't need to. You only need to remain present. Because the future doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives moment by moment. One choice at a time. One conversation at a time. One door at a time. And sometimes the most important door is the one you almost ignored. So listen carefully. If you receive an invitation that feels safe and genuine, consider accepting it. If someone starts a respectful conversation, don't immediately shut it down because of old wounds. If you meet someone new, give yourself permission to learn who they are without immediately deciding whether they are your forever person. Let things unfold. Let connection breathe. Let reality reveal character. And above all, keep your heart open without turning your brain off. Faith and wisdom can exist together. Hope and discernment can exist together. You can believe beautiful things are possible while still requiring healthy behavior. That's not a lack of faith. That's maturity. And maybe your soulmate is going to recognize that about you. Maybe they will admire the fact that you've survived difficult seasons without becoming bitter. Maybe they'll admire how deeply you love while still knowing how to protect yourself. Maybe they'll see something in you that others overlooked. And maybe that will be the moment they realize. This is different. Not because you're perfect. Because you're authentic. Because you aren't pretending. Because you aren't trying to manipulate them into staying. Because you're simply being yourself. And perhaps they will feel safe enough to be themselves too. That's where intimacy begins. Not in grand declarations. In honesty. In small truths. In vulnerability. In the courage to say, "This is who I am." And perhaps your soulmate has been waiting for someone who can hear that without judgment. Maybe you've been waiting for someone who can do the same for you. And if both of you find that, something beautiful can grow. But remember, even a soulmate connection requires work. There will be misunderstandings. There will be stressful days. There will be moments when one person needs space. There will be moments when both of you are tired. The difference is that healthy love doesn't turn every difficult moment into abandonment. It doesn't use silence as punishment. It doesn't make you beg for reassurance. It learns. It adapts. It communicates. It repairs. And perhaps this is what God is preparing you for. Not a perfect person, but a person willing to grow alongside you. A person who understands that forever isn't one decision made on a beautiful day. Forever is thousands of small decisions made afterward. I choose honesty today. I choose patience today. I choose communication today. I choose you today. And again tomorrow. And again after the argument. And again when life becomes difficult. That's the kind of love that lasts. So if you're waiting, don't lose heart. Your life is not behind schedule. Your story is not late. Your heart is not forgotten. You are not being punished. You are becoming. And someone else may be becoming too. Perhaps your paths will meet when neither of you is desperately searching. Perhaps the timing will feel almost accidental. Perhaps you'll look back and realize every wrong turn somehow placed you closer to the right moment. And when that happens, you won't need to force the story. You'll simply participate in it. You'll ask questions. You'll listen. You'll learn. You'll decide. And you'll allow the relationship to become what it is rather than forcing it to become what you imagined. That may be the most beautiful kind of love. The kind that surprises you. The kind that feels better than the fantasy because it is real. The kind that doesn't need constant confirmation because its consistency becomes the confirmation. And perhaps that is what is waiting for you. Not necessarily tomorrow. Not necessarily at a precise hour. But in the unfolding of a life you are already living. So when this message ends, don't immediately go searching for a sign. Look around you. Look at your life. Look at the opportunities you have been ignoring. Look at the people you have been too afraid to meet. Look at the places you have been too comfortable to leave. Maybe your next chapter begins with something incredibly ordinary. A yes. A conversation. A new routine. A trip. A gathering. A decision to heal. A decision to stop chasing someone who doesn't choose you. Sometimes the door to new love opens the moment you finally stop holding the old door open. And perhaps that's what today is really about. Not counting down 2 minutes. But recognizing that your future is moving even when you can't see it. You don't need to panic. You don't need to rush. You don't need to force. You need to stay awake to possibility. Because something huge may be waiting for you. And when it arrives, you want to be emotionally ready to recognize it. So tonight, tell yourself, I am open to healthy love. I am willing to receive something genuine. I will not confuse fear with intuition. I will not chase what doesn't choose me. I will not settle simply because I am lonely. I will recognize consistency. I will trust myself. And perhaps that final sentence is the most important. I will trust myself. Because when the right person appears, you won't need to abandon your intuition to keep them. You won't need to become smaller. You won't need to pretend. You won't need to beg. You won't need to chase. You will simply meet them as yourself. And they will have the opportunity to meet you as themselves. Two imperfect people. Two complicated stories. Two hearts that have been through things. Two people choosing to build something real. That is far more beautiful than a fantasy. And if God has someone prepared for you, let the timing unfold naturally. Let the meeting happen in the right circumstances. Let both hearts be ready. Let both people have the courage to recognize what is in front of them. Because sometimes the greatest blessing isn't getting what you wanted at the exact moment you wanted it. It's receiving something better when you are finally ready to appreciate it. So don't skip your own life while waiting for love. Don't postpone your happiness. Don't tell yourself you'll begin living after someone arrives. Begin now. Laugh now. Heal now. Grow now. Love your life now. Because when your soulmate arrives, you shouldn't need them to rescue you from your life. You should be able to invite them into a life that already has meaning. And perhaps they'll do the same. Maybe they'll arrive with their own dreams. Their own scars. Their own stories. And instead of completing each other, you'll support each other. Instead of fixing each other, you'll encourage each other. Instead of controlling each other, you'll trust each other. That is what makes a relationship powerful. And maybe that's why the timing has taken so long. Maybe both of you needed to become capable of that kind of love. So, my beloved child, breathe. The waiting season does not define your entire story. The past does not own your future. And your current circumstances are not a prophecy of what comes next. Something can change. Someone can enter. A conversation can begin. A heart can open. A path can shift. And when it happens, you don't have to be afraid. You can walk into the moment with wisdom. You can listen to your heart and your discernment at the same time. You can enjoy the connection without rushing the conclusion. You can let love reveal itself through action. And if the person standing before you truly belongs in your life, you won't need to force them to stay. They will choose to stay. They will communicate. They will show up. They will make space for you. And slowly, day by day, you'll realize something. You weren't waiting for a miracle to happen. You were becoming ready to recognize one. So if your heart has been asking, when? Maybe the better question is, who am I becoming while I wait? Because that answer is already changing your future. And perhaps your soulmate is asking the same question somewhere tonight. Maybe they are becoming ready too. Maybe they are learning how to love better. Maybe they are healing. Maybe they are letting go. Maybe they are preparing to meet someone whose presence will change their life. Maybe that someone is you. And when your paths finally cross, remember this message. Don't rush. Don't fear. Don't idealize. Don't ignore reality. Just be present. Listen. Observe. Laugh. Talk. Learn. And let the connection become what it is meant to become. Because the most beautiful love stories aren't created by perfect timing. They are created by two people who meet when they are finally willing to choose each other with open eyes. And perhaps that is the real meaning behind the 2-minute message. Not that a clock controls your destiny. But that life is too precious to spend another minute believing love has passed you by. Your chapter isn't over. Your heart isn't forgotten. Your future isn't empty. There is still so much you haven't seen. So much you haven't experienced. So many conversations you haven't had. So many places you haven't been. And perhaps somewhere along that unwritten road is a person who will look at you and think, "Where have you been all my life?" Maybe you'll laugh. Maybe you'll cry. Maybe you'll be nervous. Maybe you'll have no idea what the future holds. And that's okay. Because you don't need to know everything. You only need to take the next step. Then the next. Then the next. And if love is part of that journey, let it come naturally. Let it be honest. Let it be peaceful. Let it be mutual. Let it be real. Because you deserve a love story that doesn't require you to lose yourself to find someone else. You deserve a love that adds to your life rather than replacing it. You deserve someone who doesn't simply arrive when it's convenient. You deserve someone who stays when life becomes real. And when that person finally enters your life, perhaps you'll understand why every previous door had to close. Perhaps you'll realize that the waiting wasn't wasted time. It was the preparation of your heart. It was the strengthening of your boundaries. It was the healing of your wounds. It was the discovery of your worth. And perhaps your soulmate was going through their own preparation too. 2 lives. 2 journeys. 2 separate paths. Slowly moving toward one intersection. And when that intersection comes, maybe it will feel like an ordinary moment. But you'll remember that ordinary moments can change everything. So stay open. Stay grounded. Stay hopeful. And above all, don't skip your own life. Because your future doesn't begin when your soulmate arrives. Your future is beginning right now. And perhaps the greatest message you can carry forward is this. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not being denied love. You are becoming ready for the kind of love that can actually stay. And when the right person finally arrives, you won't have to chase them. You won't have to convince them. You won't have to beg them. They will meet you halfway. They will choose you clearly. They will respect your heart. They will bring consistency where there was once confusion. And together, if both of you choose it, you can build something beautiful. Not because fate forced you together, but because 2 free people looked at each other and said, "I choose this. I choose you. And I choose to build something real." That is the miracle worth waiting for. And perhaps it is closer than you think. My beloved child, listen carefully, because this is where the waiting season finally begins to make sense. You may have spent so long asking when your soulmate would arrive that you forgot to ask what kind of person you would become before they did. You wondered why the door kept staying closed, why every promising connection seemed to disappear, and why your heart had to endure seasons when love felt impossibly far away. But perhaps the delay wasn't empty time. Perhaps it was the season in which you learned how to recognize the difference between attention and intention, attraction and commitment, temporary excitement and lasting peace. And now, as you step into a new chapter, something inside you is different. You no longer need someone to complete you because you've learned how to stand whole on your own. Maybe that's why the next connection will feel different. It may not arrive with a dramatic announcement or a perfect movie moment. It may begin quietly, almost unnoticed, through a conversation you didn't expect, an invitation you almost rejected, a place you almost didn't visit, or a person you never imagined would become important. And at first, you may wonder whether it means anything at all. But then you'll notice the little things, the way they listen instead of waiting to speak, the way they remember details, the way they respect your boundaries, the way they don't disappear when a conversation becomes uncomfortable. You won't have to spend every night decoding their behavior because their consistency will speak louder than their promises. And perhaps that is what you've really been waiting for. Not someone who makes your heart race for 5 minutes, but someone who makes your heart feel safe for years. Someone who doesn't create confusion and call it passion. Someone who doesn't disappear and call it space. Someone who doesn't make you chase and call it love. Someone who understands that real connection is not built from perfect moments alone, it's built from thousands of ordinary moments where two people repeatedly choose honesty, patience, respect, and kindness. Maybe your soulmate is also learning this lesson right now. Perhaps they've experienced a relationship that taught them what they never want to repeat. Maybe they've been hurt, disappointed, or afraid to trust again. Maybe they once believed that being independent meant never needing anyone, only to discover that independence and intimacy can exist together. Perhaps they're slowly opening the door again, not because they've forgotten their past, but because they've learned from it. And somewhere in that process, they may be becoming ready for the kind of relationship you have been hoping for. But don't turn this into a countdown that makes you anxious. The 2 minutes is not a promise that a person must physically appear before a clock runs out. It is a reminder to stop postponing your life. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to become happy. Stop believing your life begins when someone chooses you. Your life is already happening, and the most beautiful relationship you can build will be one that joins a life you already love, not one that rescues you from a life you haven't learned to enjoy. So when you walk outside tomorrow, look at your life differently. The person who belongs in your future might not arrive through some extraordinary event. They might enter through something completely normal. A friend might introduce you. A coworker might start a conversation. You might attend a gathering you almost skipped. You might begin a new routine. You might travel somewhere unexpectedly. You might simply become more social after a season of keeping to yourself. You don't need to predict the doorway. Just don't lock every doorway because your past taught you to be afraid. And when someone new appears, don't immediately ask, "Is this my soulmate?" Ask better questions. Do I feel respected? Can I be myself? Do their actions match their words? Do they communicate clearly? Do they take responsibility? Do they make room for my needs? Do they support my growth? Those questions will protect your heart far better than trying to interpret every coincidence as a divine sign. Faith can give you hope, but wisdom helps you recognize what is actually healthy. Maybe one day, you'll meet someone and feel an unexpected calmness around them. You won't feel the need to impress them. You won't feel like you have to perform. You won't be terrified that one wrong sentence will make them disappear. You'll simply talk. You'll laugh. You'll disagree about something small. You'll discover each other's stories. And slowly, without forcing anything, you'll realize that you are building trust. That is when you should pay attention, not because the universe sent fireworks, but because reality is showing you something beautiful. And perhaps the most surprising part will be how ordinary the beginning feels. There may be no dramatic confession. No perfect timing. No immediate declaration of forever. Just two people choosing to keep talking. Two people becoming curious about each other. Two people learning each other's fears and dreams. Two people deciding that another conversation would be worth having. And then another. And another. Until one day, you realize something has changed. The person who was once a stranger has become someone you instinctively want to tell your good news to. That's how a real relationship can begin. Not with certainty. With curiosity. Not with possession. With respect. Not with promises. With consistency. And perhaps that is why your past relationships had to teach you certain lessons. Maybe you needed to understand what you would never accept again. Maybe you needed to learn that love isn't proven by how much pain you can tolerate. Maybe you needed to stop chasing people who only become interested when you pull away. Maybe you needed to learn that someone's inability to love you properly does not mean you are difficult to love. You are not too much. You are not asking for too much. You simply need someone whose capacity matches your heart. And when that person arrives, you won't have to shrink yourself to keep them. You won't have to become less emotional. You won't have to hide your dreams. You won't have to apologize for needing honesty. You won't have to pretend you're okay when you're not. You will be able to communicate. You will be able to grow. You will be able to disagree without destroying each other. And when difficult seasons come, and they will, you'll discover whether the connection is real by how both of you handle them. That's the real test. Not the first date. Not the first kiss. Not the butterflies. The real test is what happens when life becomes difficult. Does the person stay present? Do they listen? Do they take responsibility? Do they repair? Do they make you feel safe enough to be honest? If they do, perhaps you're looking at something worth building. And if they don't, you have learned enough to walk away without abandoning yourself. That is the difference between the old you and the new you. The old you may have asked, how do I make them stay? The new you asks, is this relationship healthy enough for me to stay? The old you may have asked, do they love me? The new you asks, do they know how to love me? The old you may have waited for someone to choose you. The new you understands that you are choosing too. And that is powerful. Because when you stop begging to be chosen, you become free to choose what actually deserves your heart. Maybe your soulmate will recognize that strength. Maybe they'll admire the fact that you don't need them but genuinely want them. Maybe they'll feel safe because your love isn't based on control. Maybe they'll finally understand what partnership means. And perhaps you'll realize that the love you've been waiting for was never supposed to feel like a desperate search. It was supposed to feel like two lives naturally becoming connected. Two people making room for each other. Two people still remaining individuals while building something together. Two people saying, I have my own life, and I want you in it. That is healthy love. And if God has someone prepared for you, perhaps that is the kind of connection you are being prepared to recognize. So don't be discouraged by the silence. Don't interpret every lonely night as evidence that you're forgotten. Don't let your past convince you that your future will repeat it. Your past is information, not prophecy. Your wounds are lessons, not definitions. Your disappointments are chapters, not the entire book. And perhaps the next page will surprise you. Maybe you'll meet someone when you aren't looking. Maybe you'll discover that the person you thought was just a friend has deeper feelings. Maybe you'll cross paths with someone through a completely unexpected circumstance. Maybe you'll reconnect with someone from your past, but this time with healthier boundaries and greater maturity. You don't know. And that's okay. The mystery is part of living. You don't need to know every detail before the story unfolds. You only need enough courage to turn the page. And perhaps that's what today is asking from you. Turn the page. Not because you're guaranteed a soulmate tomorrow, but because your life deserves a new chapter regardless. Let go of the belief that your happiness is waiting somewhere outside of you. Let go of the idea that one person has the power to complete your story. Let go of the fear that if this person doesn't come, nobody will. You don't know what life is preparing. And you don't need to know. You just need to remain open to something better than what you've already experienced. Maybe that's the real miracle. Not that someone suddenly appears, but that your heart becomes healthy enough to recognize them when they do. And perhaps your soulmate is going through the same transformation. Maybe they're learning to stop running. Maybe they're learning to communicate. Maybe they're learning that vulnerability isn't weakness. Maybe they're learning that commitment isn't imprisonment. Maybe they're learning that loving someone doesn't mean losing themselves. And when two people learn these things at the same time, something extraordinary can happen. They can meet without needing to rescue each other. They can meet without needing to fix each other. They can meet simply ready to build. That's the kind of relationship worth waiting for. So if you're listening right now and your heart feels tired, take a breath. You don't have to figure everything out tonight. You don't have to know who your soulmate is. You don't have to know when they'll arrive. You don't have to chase signs. Just remember this. Your story is still unfolding. There are conversations you haven't had. Places you haven't visited. People you haven't met. Lessons you haven't learned. Memories you haven't created. And somewhere within all of that possibility is a future you cannot currently see. Maybe love is part of it. Maybe something even more beautiful is. Either way, keep moving. Keep healing. Keep growing. Keep living. Because the person who eventually joins your life should meet you while you're moving forward, not while you're standing still waiting for them. And when that moment finally comes, perhaps you'll understand why you had to wait. You'll understand why certain people didn't work. Why certain doors closed. Why some relationships ended. Why some prayers seemed unanswered. Maybe you will realize that some of those closed doors weren't punishments. They were protection. They were redirection. They were preparation. And perhaps the right person couldn't have entered until you stopped making space for the wrong ones. That's why you must protect your peace now. Don't reopen doors simply because you're lonely. Don't accept breadcrumbs because you're tired of waiting. Don't return to confusion because you're afraid of being alone. A soulmate-level connection should not require you to abandon your self-respect. And if someone truly belongs in your life, they won't ask you to do that. They'll bring their own clarity, their own effort, their own honesty, their own willingness to build. And you'll meet them there. Not as someone desperate to be loved, but as someone who already knows they are worthy of it. Maybe that's the greatest preparation of all. Knowing your worth before someone else confirms it. Because once you know your worth, you stop negotiating against yourself. You stop accepting, almost. You stop celebrating the bare minimum. You stop confusing someone else's potential with their actual behavior. You start looking at reality. And reality becomes your protection. So when your soulmate arrives, don't fall in love only with their potential. Get to know who they actually are. Watch how they treat people. Watch how they handle frustration. Watch how they communicate. Watch how they respond when you disagree. Watch whether they respect your no. Watch whether they celebrate your success. Watch whether they can apologize without being forced. These things may not sound romantic, but they are the foundation of romance that lasts. And perhaps your future partner is learning those same things right now. Maybe they're becoming someone who can finally hold the kind of love you have been asking for. Maybe that's why they haven't appeared yet. Maybe they needed to become ready. Maybe you needed to become ready. And when the timing finally aligns, it won't feel like something you forced. It will feel like something you recognized. Maybe you'll look at them and think, I don't know where this is going, but I want to find out. That's enough. You don't need forever on the first day. You need honesty today. Then tomorrow. Then the next day. That's how forever is built. And perhaps your soulmate will understand that too. They won't pressure you. They won't rush you. They won't demand instant trust. They'll understand that trust is earned. They'll be patient with your heart. And you'll be patient with theirs. That is how two wounded people can become two